Welcome to the Epic Company Culture Podcast, where your host, Josh Sweeney, will give you, the business leaders, HR professionals, and company culture aficionados, the knowledge you need to take your company culture to the next level.
Hello, my name is Josh Sweeney, and welcome to the Epic Company Culture Podcast. Before I get started, I would like to thank Prototype Prime for this amazing podcast space. This is season 3, where we're talking all about employee retention and company culture. And I am joined here with Crystal Sweeney, my co-host.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming in. The topic of today is misery breeds company. So, there is a lot of things that happen in any work environment. As I mentioned before, there's all these intangibles that drive the company culture. Is it an amazing place to work? Is it a poor place to work? Are people always arguing in at each other's throat? And one thing we find is misery breeds company, meaning that, when one group's down, it pulls the rest down. And when one leader's down, that really gets conveyed to the team. So what are some experiences you've had where you've seen that misery breeds company?
Yeah, absolutely. In an organization that I worked for, it was a very small company, so we didn't have a whole lot of employees in the office. So when one person was ill, I'm going to say ill, everybody was ill, and you can tell it, you could feel it. When they walked in the door, you see it on their face, you can see it in their body language, and you just knew it was going to be one of those days. And it was like that with everyone. It was just the whole office environment really changed moods depending on the people that were inside working. So, I've ran into that situation where, if one employee was unhappy, then all of us were unhappy. And then when the management would step away, it's, knock, 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 like, hey, what's going on today? And then if they're unhappy with something in the business, then they are inclined to share because they have built that trust. And then that also kind of starts to create doubt and negativity within, each of the other employees. So it can bring the whole morale of the company down.
Definitely. Are there other places that you've seen kind of the misery breeds company concept?
Yes. Youth sports. I've got kids that play baseball and football. And just when you get a group of people together, especially in that kind of scene, you have the different groups, different personalities. And you'll have I'm going to call it drama on the sidelines with the parents. This one's unhappy with this one's unhappy with that. So then they wind up, talking and agreeing, and then all of a sudden this whole group of people have a problem with something that may not necessarily was a problem to begin with, but it escalated that far. Sometimes it happens, I've heard, among coaching staff where, things are just things, one person's unhappy with one thing and they share it, and then you're right, that's not good either. And then all of a sudden, your team is kind of in shambles.
Yeah, I know I've experienced that as well, and it all seems to come back to some sort of proactive communication. Like, it's something happened, it was never addressed, they kind of let it fester, people come up with their own stories in their mind, they get people on board, and all of a sudden it grows into this behemoth. So, it seems like some of the ways to overcome these types of situations in a business environment, in a youth sports environment, is really that proactive communication. What's the policy about how we're going to address issues? How are we going to uncover, underlying tones where people are having trouble or, collaborating on something that is an issue? So there's lots of ways that we can discover those. I know we were working with one client, and they happen to have somebody in their organization was like the empathetic listener. Everybody came to them, and they were able to come back to management without giving away the names and details about who was complaining. And they could say, well, this didn't come in through the one person that always has something to say. It came in through a group of people. A number of people are having this challenge. And then that gives people the ability, the management team, to decide, do they want to get out in front of it and address that issue? And I think that's all about the company culture. There's certain places where it just seems to continue to go on, and they don't address the issue. And there's others that want to jump right out and say, hey, this is what we're feeling, this is what we're seeing, and we're going to just attack it head on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think human tendency is people want to be right, and so what they do is they want to bounce the ideas off of coworkers before they may take it to the boss, kind of create their army, so to speak.
Right.
I mean, it's more comforting if you're there with a group of people, you don't stand out as much. So, yeah, I think if bosses, managers, or founders can somehow relay the message that, you don't need an army. If you have an issue, just come to, let's talk about it. That open door policy, making sure that you have that, and they'll be less inclined to talk to their neighbors.
Yeah, definitely. And I know that, getting those things out on the table are a huge part of everybody getting along and continuing to communicate. In my EO forum, my entrepreneur organization forum that I'm in, at the end of every session, we have a thing called clean talk, and we say, I'm clean. And we go around the table, and if you have an issue to address, they want you to address it right there or say, I'm clean, and move on. And it just doesn't come up again. And I don't know that we have any of that in the work environment in a lot of places where somebody has a facility to say, I have a safe place to bring up an issue because now's the time.
Right. And I think what people will find is if they're actually willing to open up and communicate, with their bosses, a lot of times that they may find that there's just a misunderstanding, that it's just something they didn't realize or they didn't get both sides of the story. Same with football families. It's, oh, well, this happened. Well, you don't have both sides of the story. You only have one side. So it's just making sure that you really understand what all is going on in the big picture, and communication. Absolutely. It'll prevent that rumor mill from continuously going.
So think about this. When your employees are building their army and in misery, what actions do you have and what functions do you have in your organization to help overcome this? Is it a safe place for clean talk, or is it some other methodology that you have to make sure that you're proactive in heading off any issues before they become a major problem? Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Epic Company Culture Podcast with Josh Sweeney. If you enjoyed this content, please subscribe on iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. For additional content and transcripts, visit epicculture.co. If you have questions or topics you would like us to address or expand on, tweet us at epicculture1 or email at podcast@epicculture.co.